My name is Gregory Baxter. I moved to Baker in 1964 when I was 4. And so I grew up here. And I graduated from high school here in 1978 and never really planned on coming back. But 11 years later, in 1989, we came back and we've been here ever since. I had always wanted to be a lawyer. My brother sold insurance, lawyers sued insurance companies. They weren't really fond of me becoming a lawyer. So that's why I didn't go into law immediately. But after about 6 months or so, I turned to my wife and I said, I only have one life. Do you mind if I go to law school? She says, no, go ahead. Back in about the time I was born, there was an old TV show called Perry Mason. And so when I was a little boy, I liked to watch Perry Mason on TV, the reruns. Just before 7th grade, when I was 12, I convinced my parents to let me go to the courthouse to watch a murder case. So I remember I went up the stairs into the 2nd floor and there was a deputy out. He goes, what do you want? I said, I want to watch court. He said, well, you have to be quiet because it's not Perry Mason in there. So I went inside. In my mind, I was there an hour, but I was probably there 10 minutes. I was fascinated. I really, really liked it. So we had 3 little boys and my wife was pregnant with our daughter. And so that was very stressful. So I put in to become the DA. I had only been a lawyer a couple of years. I hadn't been out of law school 3 years yet. But anyway, I worked really hard. The governor appointed me and I got elected. And I was the district attorney for over 8 years. But I'd always wanted to be a judge. So in 1999, I filed to become the judge. And so I was elected in 2000, 2006, 12, and 18. There's some repetition in the kind of cases, but every case was unique and different because it was about people, okay? And I like people. And I think that the law helps society work well, helps people do well. I would say go to a school where you come out with not a lot of debt because that gives you options, okay? Don't go into law to get rich, okay? Go into the law because you want to help. So for me, the most satisfying things that I have, and what's kind of interesting is the things that people have told me over the years, having been the judge for a long, long time. I was the judge for nearly 20 years. They appreciated the fact that I cared about them when I made a decision. An old judge told me before I started, he said, call them as you see them and then forget them. And I used to remember everything. And then one day, it just kind of poured off. And I didn't try and remember. And I deliberately didn't keep a journal of what I did at work. Because normally when people would come to court, it was for a bad day in their life. Why do I want to remember people on their bad days? I want to remember them on their good days. I think that when you talk about advice to people is you got to care about people. You have to be good at your craft. You need to know the law. You need to know how to find the law, how to apply. A lot of times people say, oh, I want to be a lawyer because I really am a great arguer. I don't think that makes you a great lawyer. I think you need to look for solutions, okay? And so for me, satisfaction is that people appreciate the fact that I cared. Probably the best thing I had was I had a really supportive wife, because, when there were challenges, she never griped. She was always very supportive and we would talk about things. So when I retired, I really retired for her. It was for her benefit that I retired. So I have a friend from the coast that used to say, we have the best job in the world. And I do think that being a judge was the best job in the world. I think that if you, probably in anything that you do, I think you need to have a balance. So my wife and I, we've been married for 40 years. We never talked law. That would put her to sleep. Okay, so we didn't talk about those kind of things. But we had a family. I coached YMCA basketball for 15 years. We had 5 kids. I have lots of grandkids now. I do a lot of church work and those kind of things. I just try and get involved so that I have other things to focus on other than just work. And so that's what I would tell someone to do is, have a good, stable life, and then it helps you. Sometimes people focus so much on their studies and becoming that they don't create that becoming of a life separate from work. So when guys and gals would come out and they didn't have a family, they didn't have a spouse, they didn't have a partner that they could rely on. Especially out here, it's kind of lonely. It's kind of lonely. Where do you meet people? That is a challenge that people come up with. Most attorneys that I've dealt with, they're good at doing the law. They're good at doing the legal work. It's the other stuff that becomes the challenge. Listening is more important than speaking. You have to be able to hear what's being said. Then you need to be able to make arguments that make sense and fit the law. And so I think if you have good computer skills, if you learn to listen and then to speak accurately, you're going to learn the law, how to find the law changes, you have to keep up to date on all those kind of things. But I would say the other part is just be well-rounded in yourself so that you can relate to all sorts of different people. And I think the most successful attorneys are ones that are well-rounded and that have a good sense of what's happening in the community, what's happening around them. If you're going to talk to a juror especially, you have to be able to relate to them. And so for me, when I look at successes, when I look at what I'm grateful for, the dad that called and told me his boys had gotten clean, when people do well, that's what I really like. And, there are a few businesses I created when I was in private practice. I like seeing those, there are things over the years that I like. There's very little about my career when I look back over the years that I didn't like.